Tonight on this special edition of Newsline, we'll take a look back at Operation Keiko Lift, the project to free Keiko, the killer whale. From the arrival of his holding pen to an update on what his condition is today. All this and more coming up next on this Newsline special edition. Welcome to this special edition of Newsline. I'm Petty Officer Kayla Thompson. Tonight we'll take a look back at Keiko's journey to Iceland. In our first report, Petty Officer Alan Mueller brings us a story about the delivery of Keiko's pen to the NATO base on June 21st of 1998. The pen was delivered on a Russian-built Kantonov cargo plane, the largest cargo plane in the world.
Keiko the killer whale is only about 25 feet long, and although he weighs about 10,000 pounds, flying him in this giant cargo plane would be overkill. But the floating pen the Keiko Foundation plans to build for the killer whale is nearly the size of a football field. It took 14 semi-trucks to load the pieces onto this plane before it took off from Oregon, where Keiko, or Willie, is living now.
This is a bay pen for Keiko, the killer whale. It's a bay pen structure that will be going out to the Vestman Islands, and where it's about 250 feet long, 100 feet wide, and we're going to be putting it in place out there and then moving Keiko, the whale that was in the Free Willy movies, over there hopefully sometime in September or early spring.
Once the pieces are unloaded and taken to the Westman Islands, it'll take 45 days to assemble Keiko's new home by construction crews working 20 hours a day. Why is so much effort being expended for a whale? After all, killer whales aren't an endangered species.
I think a lot of attention's being paid to him because he's a movie star, and he had a lot of people take some second thoughts about whether these animals should be in captivity or not. And then the children of the United States and North America, they took the message at the end of the film where they said, if you would like to see him released, contact this number, and they did it by the thousands. And they threw their nickels and pennies into the jars to support this effort. And it's the children of North America that are, with corporate sponsors, of course, that are actually freeing Willie.
It'll be a while before Willie is actually free. His underwater cage is designed to let him readjust slowly to living on his own again, in the ocean, after a long career as both a movie star and a SeaWorld attraction. It'll be up to Willie himself to decide when to leave his cage.
The veterinarians and the scientists will watch him very closely, but ultimately he'll kind of determine and show us that, yes, he will be able to make it on his own, or no, he won't. And if they determine that it's not a good percentage that he can be released and do well, then they will just care for him in this pen the rest of his life.
The waters around Keflavik in the Westman Islands, where Keiko's pen will be anchored, is home to a pod or group of untamed killer whales. And contact with them, even through the bars of his cage, is supposed to help Keiko transform himself from a Hollywood killer whale into an ordinary killer whale, living in the ice-cold waters of the North Atlantic. Reporting for Newsline, I'm Petty Officer Alan Mueller.
4 months after the pen's arrival on the NATO base, the Air Force geared up to carry Keiko to his new home in Vestmannaeyjar. But before Keiko arrived, the media descended on the NATO base. The C-17 chosen to fly Keiko to the Vestmannaeyjar Islands arrived in Iceland to deliver cargo and 18 media representatives to Iceland on August 31st. This first trip to Iceland with the media was designed to give the pilots of the C-17 a chance to practice landing on the short runway in Vestmannaeyjar. But due to high winds, the C-17 landed on the NATO base, where the media found themselves staying for a few days. Petty Officer Martin Wright files this report.
Wind. Plenty of it. Getting off the plane and arriving at billeting. After the flight that started in McChord Air Force Base, Washington, many of the news crews headed straight for their rooms. But while the winds here were bad, they were worse in the Westmans. The sustained winds of 50 knots per hour in the island kept the C-17 on the ground today, which means some of the group has to wait till the wind there calms down.
Today the weather in the Westman Islands is not good enough for us to fly in. It'll be Thursday before we might get out of here and fly into the islands.
For the news people, that meant either driving to the Westmans or waiting for the winds to die down.
50 knot winds, and they're saying we cannot fly today. We're going to have to wait probably until Thursday. Today's Tuesday morning, and the weather has to be pretty good for the C-17 to get into the Westman Islands. So we can't go today. Disappointing for some of the media.
I think we're going to take the ferry and go down to that island. It's going to be a rough ride.
The crews now have the wind hurdle to overcome, but for the C-17 crew, they not only were originally planned to deliver the press to the Westmans, but also deliver a 60K loader, which will help in the offloading of the whale when it reaches its final destination. The C-17 was chosen because it's the only craft in the world that can carry the load and land and take off on the short runway in the Westmans. And according to the Weather Office, they'll get to do that tomorrow, when the winds are expected to die down. Reporting for Newsline, I'm Petty Officer Martin Wright.
On September 2nd, the weather cleared and the C-17 left the NATO base for the Vestmannaeyjar island of Heimaey, carrying equipment, the media representatives, and our own Petty Officer Alan Mueller, who filed this report.
Landing in a C-17 can only be described as a controlled crash. Like a monster truck, the C-17 is built for rough terrain.
Obviously, we don't go into as many runways that are this short as we do normal runways, normal-sized runways throughout the world. However, the C-17 is designed to go into a runway as short as 3,000 feet long.
Yesterday, this C-17 dropped off the K-loader, or Keiko's trailer. Keiko's going to ride this thing to his new home in the Westman Islands next week. Why is the Air Force being used to save a whale? This was the most common answer.
But we were looking for an airplane that could fly Keiko non-stop from Oregon to Iceland, and the Air Force had the best available plane to do it. That C-17 is a wonderful aircraft.
Well, it's pretty simple. Only one aircraft on the planet can do this mission because of a couple of reasons. It's about a 3,900-foot runway. The weather's a real challenge. The load, obviously, with the whale is different. It's an outsized cargo. It's just this mission's special in a lot of ways, and it's the only one aircraft that is special to take. That's the C-17. And well, the Air Force we operate. It's our newest airlift aircraft.
I don't really have feelings on it either way. I think it's exciting to get a chance to do this. This is what we train to do, to go to an unusual field, fly a long distance, land on a strange short field. It's what we train to do. We rarely get a chance to do it, and I think it's a great way to show off the capability of C-17.
Okay, so it's to show off the C-17 Globemaster. But what else is the Air Force getting out of this?
Actually, yeah, we're being paid by the Free Willy Keiko Foundation to do this mission, so that's being taken care of. We're just excited to be a part of it.
Well, you know, it's funny. I think a lot of people would say, for all the money we've been spending on the military for things that don't affect us at all, whether it's airlifts in Bosnia or Scud missile attack or Patriot missiles, things like that, I think people actually see the military being used for something that they can relate to, and I think most people are pretty okay with that.
And it's for a special reason, too, which makes it great. It's for kids all around the world who love Keiko, including my little girl, so it's a great thing we're doing, I think.
This isn't the first time the U.S. military has dealt with killer whales. Back in the 1950s, killer whales were a menace in Iceland's waters, not a tourist attraction.
The Icelandic government got some planes to drop bombs on killer whales that were spoiling the herring fisheries off Icelandic coast.
One Icelander said, that's what the Iceland Defense Force is for, protecting Iceland. But because of Keiko and the movie Free Willy, no one thinks of killer whales as a threat anymore.
I think the old days are certainly gone, and if anybody were even suggest, you know, trying to go out and hunt whales again, there's no way in the world they'd go for that.
Keiko should be safe inside this pen. As one TV reporter said, it's a fitting home for a movie star.
Yeah. Yes, Keiko definitely has it made. He does.
Keiko's move to the Westman Islands is the biggest thing to happen here since a volcanic eruption destroyed half of this town in 1973.
Eruption on the island back in 1973, and that was probably the last time that we had this kind of an attraction from the media.
It's hard to tell what residents here think about Keiko, but they were impressed by the C-17.
I mean, just look at this magnificent piece of work here behind me. Just experiencing landing in it, and it was quite amazing. And I hope that Keiko won't be too uncomfortable on board.
American Airlines actually sent him a frequent flyer card. We think that we know that we can have killer whales out of the water in a transport box. We've had them out of the water for a couple days, so anywhere between 9 and 24 hours, he'll do just fine. Of course, the shorter the better.
But what do Icelanders think about this massive effort for Keiko?
Many people, I would say about 3 in every 10 don't really care about it, think it's much ado about nothing, but mostly people, they really see it as an opportunity, not especially to saving the whale, but to give the world a positive image of Iceland and so on.
You know, when we came over here to Iceland and we're talking to people, and you're like, oh, Keiko, he's a whale, he's nothing, he's food, we'll eat him. You know, it's like, wow. You know, there's really a big difference there.
Wednesday, September 9th, the focus on the Air Force and the efforts of the Free Willy Foundation and the media frenzy over Keiko will finally begin to fade. After Wednesday, when Keiko moves into his pen, the story will be whether or not Keiko thrives in his new home, and if he can eventually be released into the wild.
Well, it depends on Keiko. If Keiko continues to thrive in the environment that we suspect as we suspect he will, then we hope that Keiko is released back into the wild environment, and we fulfill the promise to many young people around the world, and indeed to Keiko himself.
Reporting for Newsline, I'm Petty Officer Alan Mueller.
When we return, our Newsline special on Operation Keiko Lift will continue as we watch Keiko's return to the waters of the North Atlantic.
Betsy? The NATO-based Self-Help Academy has graduated over 400 students since it opened in December 1997. But for many people, the question still remains, what exactly is a Self-Help Academy? Some think that it simply shows you how to do home improvements. Chrissy? Although the class is designed for the average individual, it also provides information about the new and unique construction methods of NATO-based housing and special maintenance tips. Jenna? The 2-hour course is open to all active duty or family members residing in housing and is mandatory for those wanting to use the self-help store. Jim? For more information on times and how to sign up for the Academy, call the self-help store at 7575.
Ladies and gentlemen, the graduating class of the Self-Help Academy.
Tired of hearing all about amazing places in Iceland but simply have no way to get to them? Call MWR about taking a Golden Circle tour. On this day trip, you'll see many of southern Iceland's most famous attractions, such as Thingvellir National Park, where Iceland's parliament was established over 1,000 years ago. The stunningly powerful Gullfoss waterfall. The historical church site at Skálholt. The geothermal area of Geysir, from which many similar areas worldwide take the name. All of this combined with hours of beautiful scenery in between guarantee an experience you won't soon forget. Call MWR's Project Player for information on this and other trips.
Welcome back to this special edition of Newsline. On the 8th of September, one day before Keiko's flight to Vestmanna Yar, preparations were on their way for Keiko's arrival both in Vestmanna Yar and on the NATO base. If there would have been bad weather in the Vestmanna Yar, the C-17 carrying Keiko would have used the NATO base as a backup landing site. On the day of Keiko's flight, the weather was good and Keiko made a safe landing in Vestmanna Yar. After the landing, he was taken by truck and barge to his new home in the harbor at Hamay. Keiko's delivery into his pen was surrounded by heavy press coverage, and here is an interview conducted by Airman Joseph Furman with Nola Harvey, the Director of Animal Care for Keiko, as we watch Keiko's return to the water.
What are Keiko's chances of rehabilitating into his family unit out in the ocean?
That's a good question. I wish I had a crystal ball to answer it, because I'd love to know the answer myself. We're taking it one step at a time, and we have to. We're dealing with a live animal, so we don't want to just open the nets and turn him loose and have him fail. And that's not healthy. He could die, and that wouldn't be the right thing to do. So we're taking it one step at a time. When we move him to the Westman Islands, that'll give us a good idea of how well he's adapting to his environment. Then I think socialization, he's got to be introduced to other killer whales. And they come right into the bay where we're putting him. So we're hoping that that's going to tell us a lot. We already know he can catch live fish, and so we'll just take it one step at a time and one day at a time and cross our fingers that he's able to pull it off.
How old was Keiko when he was captured?
We think Keiko was somewhere between about 6 months and 2 years old when he was captured off the Icelandic coast, and we don't know for sure. Nobody's actually, well, let's check your ID and see how old you are. So, but we were estimating him somewhere to be between 20 and 22 years of age now.
Wow. So he's been living his life in captivity for possibly 6 months to 2 years.
Yeah.
What psychological effect would that have on a whale?
Well, I'll tell you, he's become very adaptive. We've seen him become more and more of a killer whale lately, especially when we started hunting. He's feeling better about himself. He seems to have gained a tremendous amount of self-confidence in himself. He's very aware. We as his caretakers are part of his everyday routine. But I believe once we put him back in the ocean, it's going to be, he's back in his world. We're going to become secondary at that point. The ocean's a very acoustic environment, and that's how these guys are used to living. And to go back into his own environment and hear that is I think it'll be a tremendous asset for him, and that'll turn him away from the human contact, looking more back into his world.
After living his whole life in captivity, going out into the ocean again, all the new sounds, the other killer whales, probably going to be pretty scary for him if a whale can feel scary well.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that need to be answered, and that's pretty much the fun of this entire process. We have so much to learn about killer whales in general, especially an animal like Keiko. We've never done this with a killer whale before, and so we don't know what his reactions are going to be. And the hardest thing, I think, for us as human beings is we're task-oriented and goal-oriented. We have to get him here. And the hardest thing for us has been to get the rest of the world to understand we don't have to get there. It's up to Keiko. And we're doing what's best for him. We're animal care professionals, so we're trying to make sure that he's well taken care of, and if he can't make it and has to spend the rest of his life in a bay pen, he'll be cared for. He'll be under human care, but he'll be in his environment where he can hear things and understand things and feel the ocean currents and things of the sort. But if we do get that chance to free him, we're going to be right there alongside him, making sure that he does okay.
Is the water he's being put into is just a little bay off of the Atlantic? Is this water going to be colder than we've used to? Or?
Not too much. Right now the water temperature in the bay out there is roughly right around 10 degrees Celsius, maybe a little bit less. It gets down to about 2 to 4 degrees Celsius in the wintertime, so it's not too bad. The first year he was in Oregon, we had a day of 2 degrees Celsius, so right around 39 degrees. And he appears to adapt to it very well. He's a North Atlantic killer whale. It just means he'll eat more and exercise more to stay warm.
Which is pretty good. The size of his pen is, in relative to him, is how much larger?
Ooh, it's huge. The pool he lives in Oregon is 150 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 25 feet deep. This pool that we built in the bay, and the bay will be netted off also, but the pool that he's actually going into, the structure, is 250 feet long, 100 feet wide, and 33 feet deep at low tide. So it's 60% larger overall than his bay in Oregon. 3.2 million gallons of water, and that's quite a bit of water for one whale.
Is he going to be in the pen then for all of this winter and then released?
More than likely. What I'm hoping for is he'll adapt to the pen very well. Then starting next spring, we'll actually start opening up the pen, hopefully, if he's doing well, and allowing him to start exploring the bay itself. The bay will have a net across it so that he can't just prematurely go out in the ocean, but that'll provide him more room. I like to use the analogy, we've been training a marathon runner in a gymnasium in Oregon. Now it's time to use that marathon runner, bring him out here on the road, and let him see what hills are like and things of the sort. Of course, there's no hills in the ocean for him to do that with, but he's gaining more and more strength and understanding different things. And he's done very well so far. We're crossing our fingers it'll continue.
Keiko arrived in the Vestmanna Yards in September of 1998 and has been living there for 7 months. Airman Joseph Furman had a chance to journey to see Keiko while on an MWR tour to Vestmanna Yard's main island of Heime, and brings us this report on how Keiko is adapting to his new life in the North Atlantic.
In September, Keiko made the long journey from his holding tank in Oregon back to his native waters of the North Atlantic on board an Air Force C-17. Today, 8 months later, Keiko continues on his journey to freedom in a holding pen in the harbor of the Vestmanna island of Heime. As ships enter the harbor, they pass very close to Keiko's holding pen inside the protective volcanic cliffs. During my visit to the island of Heime, the Ocean Future Society, which was formed in a merger between Jean-Michel Cousteau and the Free Willy Keiko Foundation, gave me the opportunity to visit Keiko in his pen and to visit with his caregivers. Keiko did well during his shipment to his new home in the Vestmanna Islands, and Peter Noah of the Ocean Future Society had nothing but praise for the Air Force's efforts in shipping Keiko to his new home.
Was a great trip as far as I'm concerned. I was responsible for a lot of logistics actually in Newport. The load masters were guys that they just knocked me down. I thought they were the greatest guys in the world. Every time we asked for something, they were right there, did an incredible job of loading the plane in a real short period of time. They knew where everything was. I just cannot say enough great things about them. And that was even before we got off the ground. Coming over, the pilots did a great job. They kept us informed. They landed in an incredible manner. They did a great job with the plane. I got to tell you, I was very impressed. It was very exciting to be involved with the transport. I really liked those guys. I thought they were pretty cool.
When Keiko arrived at Heime's airport, he was taken by truck, then barge to his new home.
The transport actually from the airport was pretty methodical. So he's in an environment that he can hear but he can't see. So he's not sure. So he's bump, bump, bump. So the transport from the airplane actually to the barge and out to here was pretty uneventful. When you pick a whale up out of the stretcher, you have to be careful because they have a tendency to move around a little bit. And then when you put them in, you have to be careful that the stretcher bars are stretched in such a way that he doesn't foul himself as he goes out. And then you expect him to be very sore or stiff, just like we are when we get off planes for a period of time. He exhibited very little of that. As soon as he got in the water, he was kind of off to the races, checking things out.
Keiko's life has been one of very little freedom and a lot of captivity.
Kind of in a Reader's Digest version is that he was collected as probably a 2-year-old or thereabouts, somewhere probably in the southeast range of Iceland, transported to a small holding facility in Iceland, stayed there for a period of time, then went to Niagara Falls with some other killer whales, stayed there for a number of years, went to Mexico City, stayed there for, probably at least 10 years, whereas where the story kind of picks up, Life magazine did their piece from there. That's where the Free Willy film was done, and then everybody obviously got very excited about his ill health, and built a facility in Oregon, and that's he went from Mexico City to Oregon, and then rehabilitated there, and then from Oregon to here. So, as far as frequent flyer miles, he's racked some up over the last 20 years of his life.
Since his arrival in Iceland, Keiko has been doing well and making a lot of progress.
He's doing real well. His strength and his physical conditioning has obviously improved dramatically. His style of swimming has continues to strengthen. As an example, he spends a lot more time underwater than he did when he was in Newport. He plays in these storms, and his breathing pattern is something that we were hoping for, and he has gone past our hopes in that department. We just added live fish to the pin, and we feel that he is, at least right now, foraging in some manner on those fish that are in here. So that's also very exciting. So he continues to surprise us.
For most of Keiko's life, he has been around people, and there has been speculation that he would have a hard time adjusting to being away from people. But Peter says he's doing well adapting to his new environment.
His interaction with the trainers has changed. When he was in Newport, he was very needy. You jump in the water now, and he'll play with you, but it's not anywhere near the level he was in Newport. If boats come by, is he curious? You bet. If you look at his world, it's pretty much the same. A boat comes over, he's a curious animal, just like we are. You bring a beta cam up, he loves beta cams because he knows that a lot of times when there's beta cams, he gets a lot of attention. So I mean, there's a lot of reinforcements that are already built into that. So does he miss people? I think he's starting to make that move away from where he needed, or from where he was to where he needs to go.
The question of whether Keiko will ever be able to make the journey from being a killer whale in captivity to a free whale in the North Atlantic is one that the Society and his trainers don't have any answers for. But they are very hopeful that he will be able to someday go free. Reporting for Newsline, I'm Airman Joseph Furman.
Keiko's return to the Vestmannaeyjar Islands is a story that we will keep you updated on as new developments occur. Before we say goodnight, we will leave you with scenes from around the Vestmannaeyjar Islands. From all of us at the Naval Media Center, thank you for watching this special edition of Newsline, and good night.